Again, we'll call the February 6th Calaveras Council of Governments regular meeting to order. If you'll please stand while we have the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial and will be acted upon by the council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or interested party may request that an item be removed from the consent agenda for further discussion. Do we have any consent agenda items being wished to be pulled? In public? Seeing none, we have consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, A, B, and C. Do we have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Unities, seconded by Councilmember Fullendorf. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved 7-0. Regular agenda item number 7, public comment. Public comment shall be limited to 5 minutes per person and limited to items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council and not on the posted agenda. Do we have any public comment this evening? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go to item number 8. Item number 8, I'm going to allow Ms. Collins to take this agenda item.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The February 6th marks the first meeting of the calendar year 2019. As part of the new calendar year protocol, the chair is appointed by the council members. The chair will serve also as the chair for the Calaveras Transit Agency, and they also serve on the executive management group, which meets about quarterly to review administrative, personnel, and financial issues of the COG. And so I will hand it over to the board for discussion and appointment of the chair.
Well, I'll talk. I would like to make a motion and nominate Gary for chair for 2019.
I'm sorry, who?
Gary.
Jump right in the seconds, thank you.
Saved by the numbers, huh?
I apologize. I couldn't hear the motion.
The motion from Amanda is to have Gary Tofanelli be the board chair for the coming year.
I'm looking at Gary wondering if he's going to hit me if I give a second.
You can second.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor of having Mr. Tofanelli be our board chair this year?
Aye.
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 With that, I will hand over your gavel back. Congratulations.
Thank you, but this is Jack's gavel.
Yeah, bring your own.
All right, well, I want to thank the board. Hopefully, I lived through the year. And moving on, we're going to item number 9. Amber, you want to?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This item is appointment of the vice chair for calendar year 2019. And again, the vice chair will serve as the vice chair of the Calaveras Transit Agency and on the executive management group as well. And I'll hand it over to the board.
Chair, I would move Amanda Follendorf to be the vice chair.
I have a motion for Amanda for vice chair.
Second.
We have a second. Any other discussion? If not, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 7-0. And I always take a minute before we go into 10. I want to thank John for his service as chair. I think 3 years. 3 years. Gosh, thank you very much. You did an excellent job.
Well, thank you. My
You
pleasure.
did very well. And it's been a pleasure having you as chair coming here in the meetings, at least for the last 2 years while I've been. So.
Well, it'd be fun to be still just a regular member as well. Thank you.
All right, moving on. Item number 10. Presentation by Richardson and Company with request for acceptance by the Council for fiscal year 2017-18 Annual Transportation Development Act, the TDA, financial audit for Calaveras Transit, the City of Angels, non-streets, transit streets, and roads audit. And is the auditor, anybody
Mr.
from the
Chair,
auditor here?
Brian Nash couldn't make it from Richardson and Company. I'll do my best to present the two audits. I've also asked Rebecca Callan, the auditor controller from the county, to be here if we had any additional questions. Would you like me to proceed?
Yes, go ahead.
So the two audits are the Calaveras Transit Agency audit. If you want to take a look at packet page 68 and then audit page number 4. This page identifies the operating expenses. They total the 1.331098. And before I start, I just wanted to let you know that the management is responsible for preparing the financial statements, and it's the outside auditors responsible under the generally accepted auditing standards to provide an opinion. Below the operating costs, you have the non-operating revenue. You outline the LTF, STA, the state grants, other revenue. The other revenue that is advertising. State grants consists of the state of good repair and the LC top. You want to go to packet page number 77 and audit page number 13. This identifies that the transit system achieved the fare box recovery ratio. They achieved 10.39. If you see how they break down, they identified the revenue, then you can withdraw the exclusions. On the very next page, packet page 78, it identifies that even though the fare box recovery ratio was met this year, it's because we didn't meet it the 2 previous years. This is the penalty year. So the penalty is the $4,139. So the CTA will be responsible for paying the penalty amount. You want to take a look at package page 82, audit page 17. This identifies any findings. This year there were no findings, and then it outlines the previous year's findings.
Any council questions? Mark?
No? Okay. If you go back to packet page 68, I just wanted to identify depreciation increased by $16,000 from the previous year. One of the, or two of the possible reasons were, we purchased multiple buses, so you have the depreciation on those. And then we had the completion of 2 PTMISCA capital projects and the Calaveras projects.
And just in following up that, part of getting transit wrapped up in order to transition it over was to really go through all of the open projects that were out there and identify if they were completed, if they needed to be disallowed, etc. We had a significant number of CIP projects that just kept carrying over year after year after year. So we worked very closely with the Council of Governments in order to identify which ones we could just close out. And the moment we were able to close them out is the moment we actually start to be able to depreciate. So that actually was very helpful.
And that
Good job. Matt?
Well, thank you to the county auditor staff. This year, we really relied on them to get this audit complete. In the previous years, we've been presenting this audit to the council in April. So this year was a real push. We were able to get COG done in December, and then these 2 in February.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you, Rebecca, and your staff. Thank you.
Yeah, and so I really appreciate, my office and being able to get this done and working very collaboratively with the COG to kind of get this transition kind of closed out and finished and kind of tie up some loose ends. We put a lot of things in place and a lot better communication, and I'm really looking forward to this transition working out and having transit be a very strong priority for the county and the city overall.
Any questions?
And thank you, Rebecca. On the city audit, this is the excess LTF streets and roads. So all the Richardson and Company had to do was test the TDA expenses and found no issues to report. The audit for transit is considered clean. And if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to try to answer.
Compared to previous years and even a couple of years ago, this is a great audit. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good job. Very good. Yes, Janice.
Thank you. Yes, in comparison to 2 years ago, this is a major shift in how things are working. And I see there is more collaboration than there has been in the past, which is very helpful. And to know that you're 60 days ahead of the curve of what we had previously also speaks to how things are working between the various agencies. So I very much appreciate the no findings report on this issue. That means that all of the work that's been done, even in-house within COG, has helped as well.
It's
So.
been, I had hopes that this would happen very quickly, but you just never know when transitions occur, and we were very happy with the abilities on both sides and the collaboration. And ultimately, this is how it's supposed to go. So this has always been my expectation all the way back. So I'm pleased for the change, and I'm looking forward to the same going forward.
My only other additional comment is 10.39% is only 0.39% over the threshold.
It
and
is.
So that creates issues if we have additional expending or obligations that occur in this next 12 months. It could easily push us under. So I just want everybody to be cognizant of that is a very tight spot to be in for us.
It is a tight spot, and you have to also take into consideration part of the factors that allowed that to happen was the additional depreciation expenses and also LC-TOP. LC-TOP was in essence utilized to mimic fare revenue. So that is, it's not exactly fares, but it does give us the allowance to use it that way. So those two factors really play into us being able to meet that number. So it's definitely something to keep into consideration. Operational points are going to have to take that into consideration.
And to write down those depreciation numbers just this one time, that's a one-time thing. And that's what we need to keep in mind as well. This is not an ongoing expense.
Yeah, and on the expense side, the dedicated staff person in the Public Works Department retired in that September. So they didn't incur salaries and benefits throughout the year. And then they were also able to exclude, new extension routes that were eligible during those years, which are not going to be eligible in the coming years. Right. So we have to really look at how we're going to use, the LC-TOP, the state of good repair, what changes and routes we're going to do. And in the previous year, I think you'll remember the surplus funding was also included to try to hit the fare box. And you usually don't want to depend on that on an annual basis, but we're in the middle of that. We're trying to surplus some stuff right now at the CTA to try to help that.
I certainly do appreciate the focus.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none. Public comments, questions? This item? No? All right. Moving on to item number 11. This is designation of a voting delegate on the California Association of Councils of Governments, CalCOG, Governing Council.
It was supposed to be
I just asked for their acceptance.
the audits.
Gary, I just need your guys' acceptance to submit those to
Oh,
us.
it was at the, I'm sorry. So we're looking for a motion?
So moved.
Second.
thought it was informational, but yeah, this is,
Yeah.
we have to accept the audit. Yeah. So I have a motion and a second. Any other conversations? No? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, moving on again to item number 11, designation of the voting delegate on the California Association of Councils of Government, CalCog, Governing Council. And Amber, this is presented by you.
Yes, I'll take the item. The Calaveras COG is a member of the California Association of Council of Governments, which is comprised of 46 members who are council of governments, regional transportation planning agencies, local transportation commissions, and metropolitan transportation planning organizations, all the acronym soup of regional transportation planning agencies in California. The organization addresses regional issues such as transportation, air quality, financial, housing, environmental, economic, and related regional topics. Each member organization of the California Association of COGs appoints a representative to serve on the CalCog board as a voting delegate. This delegate will represent the COG at the annual CalCog conference along with myself, the executive director. And there are typically 3 CalCog board meetings. One is at the annual conference and then one in the spring and the fall. And they typically provide a call-in option. Historically, this has been the chair of the COG, but it is at the discretion of the board. So I'm looking for action on appointing a delegate to the CalCog board, as well as your approval of that delegate to attend the CalCog Regional Forum this year in March.
Chair, I would be interested to know if Mr. Gomes would like to continue to represent on this next meeting, just simply because of the level of understanding you have of what's going on. And
I appreciate that, but actually I would recommend our chair be the attending member of our council. It's an outstanding conference as far as the information provided on a statewide level. This one is a changed format. It used to be 3 days from Wednesday to Friday down in Monterey. This year they've moved it down to Yosemite, which is interesting to do in March, but they've done so. And it's going from Thursday through Sunday. It's a conference where you're going to meet all the other regional council chairs, a conference where you'll also meet a lot of the other executive directors, as well as some legislative members from the state. The preparation that is done, the materials presented have always been very forward-thinking, and inevitably I have found that what I have picked up at that conference has benefited both me in understanding where the state is trying to go, but also understanding some of the alphabet soup and acronyms that are coming and why they're coming from the state with Caltrans and the California Transportation Commission. So I would recommend it. I think it's an outstanding conference, and I would recommend that our chair be the attending member.
I defer to your
Thank you.
advice.
How about we name you as an alternate? So I don't have my calendar in front of me right
Okay.
now. It looks like I'm open just by thinking about what it is. It looks like I'm open, but I don't know what I have coming up on other
Issues.
Other issues. So if at least name you as an alternate, we have somebody that has experience going there.
I was actually going to ask that the vice chair, if
I
was
would
to be
agree with
reelected,
that.
I would ask that the vice chair go.
I like the idea of an alternate.
I think the vice chair would be appropriate, just to learn and see exactly what's going on. I think it would be a great experience for you.
Would you like a motion?
Is that a motion?
I would move that our chair or his designee would be the attending member from the Calaveras Council of Governments, but that we definitely have a member attend.
Second.
Third.
I have a motion in 2 seconds.
Actually, a little less than 2 seconds.
Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, bring it back. Any further council conversations? If not, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You didn't vote. Neither did I. Okay. Moving on to item number 12.
Is there one more thing to add to the calendar?
That's fine. No problem. Number 12 is the minute order adopting a fiscal year 2019-2020 supplemental call for project guidelines for Regional Service Transportation Program, the RSTP, and Highway Infrastructure Program, the HIP funds, and issue call for projects. Amber?
Yes.
You?
Yep, I'll take this item. Approximately every 3 to 4 years, the COG approves state and federal funding for city and county projects through what we call a call for projects, which is a process that allows us to be transparent in programming funding for the city and county, and also allows us to program funding that aligns with our regional priorities here at the COG. We most recently had a call for projects completed in 2018. Which covered fiscal years 18-19 to 21-22. This I'm calling a supplemental call for projects because we are getting approximately $1.2 million in regional surface transportation program funding back from a loan that we provided to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission so as to not lapse funding. So this funding needs to be programmed by federal fiscal year 1920, which is why we need to conduct the process right now. The other funding that became available is Highway Infrastructure Program funding. This is a new funding source. It is actually provided through the Federal DOT Appropriations Act, and it's actually general fund money, not Highway Trust Fund money. So right now it's one-time funding, and it needs to be programmed by fiscal year 2021. So we thought this was a good opportunity to incorporate in this call for projects as well. So the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee of the COG, which consists of city and county staff, Caltrans staff, and COG staff, are the ones to review the project applications and develop a recommendation of projects for funding from these revenues available. This requires local jurisdiction board resolutions for the projects brought forward for the TAC to review and approve. Attached to the staff report are the draft guidelines for this call, including the fund estimate, the schedule, project evaluation ground rules, timely use of funds policy, and the project nomination application. So the TAC, they've reviewed these guidelines and recommending or requesting the COG to release the call for projects. We have applications due on May 3rd, and then we have 3 TAC meetings we have scheduled to work through the process with the TAC, but if the TAC is ready after 1 or 2 TAC meetings, we might bring a program recommendation to you earlier than August. And so I'm happy to answer any questions.
So it could be earlier than the August 7th that's on the schedule?
Correct.
Any questions?
Well, quite obviously then, the TAC has worked through the details and know that there's enough deliverables out there that make this worthwhile to go in this direction.
Correct. Yes, we've talked at the TAC, and I believe I know that the county with the new Public Works Director has reviewed the county's CIP and doing a lot of work in that area, as well as the new city administrator. So I think that we have quite a few projects that we can pull from that are getting near to ready for completion.
And the money that we loaned out will be back and available to us when?
In 1920.
1920.
So next fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Any public comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gary Caldwell, Valley Springs. One of the things with these federal programs, sometimes the deadlines sort of creep up on you and you don't realize they're coming, and sometimes you miss the funding availability. And the one program was identified that is off of the Highway Trust Fund budget, has got some money apparently in it. I don't know what the restrictions are, but I would suggest that the council give consideration to projects that would add bike lanes to many of your collector roads. I can remember doing a bike lane project on Highway 88 and Turns out that weren't a lot of bicycles used it, but it gave 4 more feet of pavement to the motors going through there in the wintertime. Sometimes they could use it. So my recommendation is that you act first on the funding that is off the budget, the Federal Highway Trust Fund budget, to get that out of the way, because what's going to happen is it's not going to come very often, and so you need to take advantage of that. The other thing I was going to suggest is that you identify, I see it says TAC meetings on certain dates here. Where are those TAC meetings held? And what time?
I'll answer. They're held at the COG offices, generally about, like the COG office,
Oh.
generally about 10 a.m. in the morning.
10 a.m. in the morning? So if looking at this listing of meeting dates of TAC, we can assume that it's going to be 10 o'clock in the morning in the COG office. Will there be agendas or information set out in advance of that?
There should
Okay.
be.
I'd like to be put on the mailing list, please.
Okay, well, so noted.
And please don't let the funding availability pass by. I know the last time we had a federal program available to the counties and cities in California and all other states. There were some cities and counties who just let the money lapse. They didn't even apply for it.
A lot of them did with the ARA funds too, back with ARA.
I beg your pardon?
The ARA funds, they did the same thing when that was going on.
That was the
back-
one I was referring to.
The ARA fund.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. This is a minute order, so we are looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other conversation? Questions? No? Call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. No? Passes 7-0. Moving on to item number 13. This is a resolution number fiscal year 19 through 17, authorizing a temporary loan of up to $400,000 from the Local Transportation Fund, or LTF funds, to the Calaveras Transit Agency, the CTA Operating Fund. Amber, this is you.
I think it's Melissa.
Oh, Melissa, I'm sorry.
No worries. Thank you,
I
Mr.
saw
Chair.
Amber on here, but I guess I didn't. No, you're right. Melissa.
During the JPA transition period, one of the compliance issues identified was the county's ineligibility in the FTA, or Federal Transit Administration program. That fiscal year, the 2017-18 apportionment totaled $250,000, and in an effort to not lose that $250,000 in federal funds and to preserve local funds, the JPA directed staff to work with FTA to try to carry that so that the CTA would be able to utilize it. So staff was successful in doing so, and as reflected in the CTA's operations budget, you see the $512,000. As I stated in my staff report, there was an operational reserve that the council approved in June, and this was to cover expenses until the invoicing and reimbursement on this funding would be realized. Well, with the government shutdown, this schedule has pretty much been blown out of the water. The process hasn't even started. Like I stated in the staff report, we haven't executed a standard agreement. Therefore, staff is recommending a temporary loan in the amount up to $400,000. And that recommendation, I consulted with the county auditor controller, and the note in this whole staff report is a template after what the county has done in the past. So, I've included, oh, go ahead.
No, I just,
Go ahead, Mrs.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I've
finish.
included, some of the background documents or backup documents is we did a cash flow analysis. So you see the $628,000 in August and how we're receiving the revenue. A majority of our revenue is received on a monthly or quarterly basis.
Right.
So we anticipated, with the end of December, we would have already submitted an invoice to FTA for that first half of the year, and we would be awaiting reimbursement, and we would have gone through this. So if you look at the bottom of the chart, so when it is red on the very bottom where it says the closing cash balance, that's when the fund would go in the red. If you see red on the cash flow in the middle, that's just the monthly basis, like the revenue you received in the month, minus the expenditures. Going into the new fiscal year, we usually approve claims for the CTA in June, and then we can start, transferring the claims. But as I said in the staff report, LTF comes in on a monthly basis, and until it is received, you can't transfer it to the CTA. And then STA is received on a quarterly basis. So to date, when we received in December our first quarter STA. Does council have any questions? I'd be happy to answer them.
Councilman Mills.
Yes, thank you. Question would be, what is your expected duration that you're looking at on this loan? You
Well-
thinking 6 months or better?
Well, worst case scenario, we've called our neighbors, we reached out to Tuolumne County to see when they typically, and we aren't forecasting we would receive the reimbursement until December of 2019. And like I said, that's worst case scenario. The government has reopened, but there is the threat of it shutting down again.
And I appreciate the honesty, because
Yeah.
we really need to know what that window is. And then the other part is is the interest going to be levied at the pooled money rate, or is there some
Yes.
other?
Yes, I identified the pooled money rate, and the county auditor controller would calculate that and give me a dollar amount, and then it would be transferred back.
Okay.
So, when you look back at, should we have still gone after that apportionment, that the county would have lost? I would say yes. In the effort to secure or keep as many LTF funding, as possible, right now we're in a timing thing. We're still scheduled to get the FTA funding, and then we'll free up the LTF and make that available to the local jurisdictions.
What would happen if this didn't get approved?
As you can see, it would be May and June till the fund would go negative. I think this council has seen that in the past. I wanted to be proactive, transparent, air the issues that I think we'll be seeing based on this program. I don't know if the council is fine with it going into the negative. I don't think the auditor controller would be very happy with that, so.
Any other questions? Any public questions? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for a motion. Or
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Moving on to item number 14, Caltrans report. This is a verbal report. No supplemental materials included. And I see Caltrans is here.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Gregoria Ponce, Caltrans District 10, and I have very few February items. I'll be open with the first one. At this time, Caltrans, we're addressing all the extreme weather road conditions events, so you may see us out there doing what we need to do. That right now is our primary focus in terms of safety and addressing extreme weather conditions. My second item up is in terms of the overall work program on grant items. We're moving forward for all invoices, so thank you for reporting and bringing those forward. And in terms of the overall work program with a quarterly detail in terms of products or reporting items, we did get those as well, and we're moving forward with those. So with that, I don't have any other items to report. Does the board have any questions for me?
Any questions from the council?
Just a thought, because I did see the update on the SB1 funding that you sent out from District 10. That has to do with State Route 49 in Mariposa County and the culvert or drainage system project in San Joaquin. And I think Alpine was involved in that as well. So hopefully we'll be able to participate sometime in the future in some of that SB1 money that they're looking at there. Those are big projects. Big projects. And I'd like to also thank Caltrans for their enormous heavy lift during the storms that we've had, not only the snow, but the rain, the ice, et cetera. If you look at our accident rate in the last 48 hours, it is substantially lower than it would normally be for these kind of events. So it has something to do with your crews and the work that they've done on our highways to keep everybody safe. And I want to thank you for it.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Gary Caldwell once again. I want to pay a compliment to Caltrans. My wife and I drive northerly on Highway 49 across the McCollum there, and we go down the canyon. And for months there was a stretch of guardrail there, I don't know, 75, 80 feet long, that was damaged and was just sitting there. Nobody was repairing it. And of course, being an ex-highway engineer, I got upset because that wasn't being repaired. So we were at the meeting of the group that's doing the study for downtown Valley Springs, and a gentleman there, and I thought he was a Caltrans rep. Turns out he was a consultant. And I was mumbling about the fact that Caltrans hasn't done anything to repair it. And so he said, well, I know the maintenance superintendent there, or supervisor, whatever. He said, I'll speak to her. I think it's a woman. I'll speak to her. Okay, and in about 3 weeks, it was done. So I wrote an email to the deputy director in charge of planning, District 10, saying that I appreciate so-and-so helping get that fixed, and how quickly he had it done, and so forth. He wrote back and said, he's not one of ours. He's a consultant. And so sorry, it doesn't matter whether he's a consultant or a Caltrans person, but it got done. And I appreciate Caltrans getting on that once they're, of course you wonder how can they not be made aware of it, they got to drive that road every once in a while. Once they were maybe pushed by the deputy director to get it done, they took care of it. Thank you.
Any other public comments on Caltrans? If not, we'll move on to item number 15. This is a county quarterly report.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. My name is Joshua Pack. I'm the Director of Public Works and Transportation for Calaveras County. If you're following at home on sheet 15A, there's a series of programs and projects identified in the capital improvement program. I have updates for about 5 or 6 of these and some other tidbits to share with you today. The county roadway sign retroreflectivity upgrade, that's an RSTP funded project in fiscal year 17-18. The county in parallel applied for a highway safety improvement program grant funds for cycle 9 for a retroreflectivity project on about 200 miles or so of road. The county found out in December that we were successful in that grant funding, and on top of that, we're funded essentially 100% of that funding through that federal grant program. So moving forward, I'll be working with our COG counterparts to potentially deobligate that project and look for other opportunities for that funding. That's a great opportunity when we can take some of the discretionary RSTP funding and looking to apply that to other projects locally and do some of these projects with federal grants. So that's a great win for us. That project will begin here in the coming months, and we'll probably, that's about a 2-year project on average. I've done 2 of those. As a matter of fact, I was the first county in the state of California to deliver one about 2-3 years ago. They're a little more difficult than it sounds, but I know how to get through that. We'll be probably delivering that hopefully in calendar year 2021. Moving on here, the next one I have an update for is O'Byrne's Ferry left turn pocket. Again, this is one of our projects that's been on the books for a little bit. I know I've been working closely with Supervisor Mills, as is in his district. So that project, we also applied for a Highway Safety Improvement Program grant funding opportunity. Unfortunately, that one was not funded. So that one has a funding gap right now. However, we have rescoped the project. We're working with a consultant to significantly reduce the size and scope of that project to get it more in line with expectations and with available funding. That effort should be done within the next month or two, and then we'll have a better idea of our funding gap and opportunities to close that gap. I'm confident we'll deliver that by 2020, and that's how I've programmed it in the county capital improvement program. However, for folks who are getting to know me, I like to push projects, and so I'm looking for opportunities to fund that potentially in 2019, depending on the available funding sources. The next project is the Pine Street West Point Bike Path. This is an interesting one. As you can see on our list, it is the oldest of our projects. That's not a distinguishment that I look at positively. So I've been working with staff. This is an interesting one where it's scoped in different ways. It's called Bike Path on this list. It's called Bike Lane in our program, and actually in the Bikeway and Trail Master Plan, it's a bikeway. So we're not going to install three at the same time. So we're looking at doing a bikeway. I think that's appropriate for the community in which it's in. So I think we can do that within or close to $120,000 authorized for construction. So our staff's working on a design plan right now. Depending on the preliminary cost, we may look to deliver that this year, or due to its small size, we may try to combine this with another project either this year or next year. But either way, we're marching forward to delivery of that, hopefully this year and no later than 2020 for sure. The next project I'll talk about is the State Route 4 Wagon Trail realignment. As you can see, the predominant amount of funding is identified to this project. Amber and I have been working closely with our counterparts at Caltrans to move this project forward. Fortunately, about 3 weeks ago, I believe, or 2 weeks ago, we received authorization from FHWA and Caltrans to move forward with the project. It had been stuck in a limbo for the last number of months regarding the right-of-way and preliminary right-of-way phase. So we were able to unbreak that cog, no pun intended, and move forward with the project. So we met with Caltrans staff yesterday for a project kickoff for the right-of-way phase. That meeting went well, and our consultants are already moving forward with some of the preliminary work that's necessary to move forward with that purchase, including trying to get rights to move onto properties to do geotechnical studies, right-of-way analysis surveys for that. And so we're moving forward with that one. We have a pretty aggressive timeline with the funding on that, in particular with some shop set-aside funding that needs to be delivered. So we think we can get our work done, and we need to push not only ourselves but also Caltrans to make sure their reviews are done in a timely manner. So we're working aggressively to that, and I've tasked my consultant not only to keep the hammer on Caltrans, but to keep the hammer on us, so to make sure we're not lagging in any of our reviews. Finally, the last one I'll talk about in a little bit of length today is the State Route 49 Mountain Ranch Improvement Project. This one also has a myriad of funding sources dating back to fiscal year 10-11. I've been working closely with Supervisor Tofinelli on that project. Again, an opportunity to rescope that. This project had been mired in some environmental, cultural resources concerns. I think through an appropriate rescope, we can eliminate or significantly reduce those impacts, resulting in a much smaller or much fewer impacts on the CEQA side and NEPA side. So my goal and my plan, and I have committed to delivering this by no later than 2020. This will include a realignment of Pope and Mountain Ranch improvements from the Government Center driveway all the way down to State Route 49, and an improvement of the sidewalk there. A lot of that is an ADA accessible, so making sure that's an improvement. Also improving bike accessibility, providing a marked crosswalk to link the hospital over with the Government Center is also a part of that project. So excited to work on that, hopefully have that under construction in 2020. I don't have an update for you today on Valley Springs. I did call my counterpart in the planning department to get an update. Unfortunately, he was busy today and couldn't get back to me. But if there are any needs on this board for an update, I can provide those offline after this date. And the last thing I want to bring you up to date with is, as part of my time here, I've only been here 3.5 months, but in January, with the help of my staff, my incredible staff, we were able to present a countywide capital improvement program draft to the board. I've been working with board members on feedback for that, and we'll be presenting a final adoption of that document, which includes about 37 projects, including a number of these in here. The goal of that is to, it's tough to move forward without having a plan. And so in the past, we haven't done the best job of articulating that plan with the public and with the board. And so this is our first effort in a lot of years to do that. I think it's a thoughtful and intelligent plan to move forward with our resources, and looking forward to enact that. And again, a lot of these projects are driven through that document as well. And I think there's some synergy between the COG CIP and our CIP. So with that said, it's a little longer update than normal, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about these or other projects. Thank you.
Josh, don't leave.
I'm not.
I need to talk to you before you go today, tonight. On State Route 4 also, I know that COG has been working really hard to try to find additional funding sources. We now have Mia O'Connell engaged in it, and there are opportunities and options that we'll continue to search out, and I know that you're involved in that as well. So this isn't just about what phase we're in, but how do we ensure that we've got the funding necessary when the time comes. The Gantt chart's out, and I know it's very aggressive, but it's been languishing for so many years. So I'm just glad to see that we're picking up the ball again and running with it. I appreciate your effort.
Yeah, and to speak on that, both Amber and I have been involved with downloads from the federal government on the grant opportunities we went after, and were not successful in both infra and build grants. So I think Amber was on a call with Mia on the infra program and provided a download. We'll be on next Monday, I believe, with Mia and you on the build grant. And the opportunities for these are when you're not successful for grants, having the opportunity to talk to the federal government and hearing where you were perhaps a little bit behind or a little bit short in their eyes really educates us and allows us to mature in the process. So that we can provide a better grant opportunity in subsequent cycles. I think there's also a little bit of guilt on their side that if they keep talking to us, it might make them a little more sympathetic to our cause. So I think it's a worthwhile effort to engage with them. And again, we become more educated and more mature in that process as well.
Thank you.
Any other council questions? Yes.
I want to start first by saying thank you for all the work Public Works is doing also with the current weathers. We know it's hard up the hill. Last year, I'd asked about some lights in San Andreas, not the high overhead, but the decorative lights that PG&E installed as part of the underground wiring project. Mm-hmm. It got first looked into by Caltrans, who referred us back to the County Public Works Department. A gentleman named Steve from your department responded and said that PG&E was doing a high efficiency lighting project, and they were supposed to replace those lights in addition or separate from the overhead lights, but the decorative lights as well. With PG&E's bankruptcy, I don't know if that should be revisited to see if they're actually going to continue that project or not. But right now, there's at least half a dozen or more of the decorative lights that you normally would use in San Andreas as you're walking down the streets that are out and have been out for months.
Okay. Are those on, if you don't mind me following up, are they on, how what's that?
On St. Charles Highway.
On St. Charles Avenue. Okay. Well, I could certainly do some research to find out what's going on with those, whose responsibility they are, if they're the county's. We could certainly make the repairs to that for those ones that are currently out. And if they're Caltrans or others, I mean, whether it's new or expanding is one thing, but repairing lights that are out and making sure their work is not part of a PG&E thing. That's part of the day-to-day duties. And there's great liability in not making sure those are up to date. Right. So I'll follow up with that.
Like I said, the response had specifically been from Caltrans that it was the county's responsibility, and Steve from your department specifically said that he was reaching back out to PG&E with their high efficiency lighting program to get them done.
Gotcha. Let me follow up, and then I'll circle around with you at a later date. Let me know I'll let you know what I can find out. Give me a few days or maybe a week.
Understood.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any public questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 16, the city quarterly reports. And I see one of the M&M girls is here.
Back again. Thank you. Melissa Eads, City of Angels. And I do have some updates on the projects that we have identified on our CIP, and I have to apologize because I think last time I was here I committed to updating and populating this information more frequently. And unfortunately, my staff person responsible for that has taken a new position. So I am actively recruiting and here to update you myself with this information. So first, the State Route 49 sidewalk project and bike lane project. We have environmental clearance as of December 2019, which is exciting. We have final plans underway, and right-of-way is scheduled for spring 2019. And I believe this is the one that we recently just received a CTC allocation in January for right-of-way. So we are on track with that project. The Angels Camp Trails project, we are in environmental and progress is underway. We anticipate completion of environmental in spring of 2020. We have stakeholder meetings that will begin this spring 2019. The Murphy's Grade Road project is in a really good place with environmental clearance also. December 2018. I'm sorry, on State Route 4, I think I said December 2019. I meant December 2018. We're there, we've done it. But Murphy's Grade Road also environmentally cleared December 2018. We have done our property owner outreach, that is complete. The plans for this project are at 65%, and we applied for an active transportation grant, but we were very close but not successful. I think we scored an 84 with the lowest score being funded in 85. So we are committed to going back after ATP. But having gotten so project ready on Murphy's Grade Road, we are looking for construction funding because I don't believe we have any construction funding identified on this project other than the RSTP that you see there. And I believe the estimates are coming in about $2 million for that project. So we will be actively seeking that out and also downloading with Caltrans what we can do to improve our application for ATP. And then also just want to thank you for your programming of the consultants to help us with those active transportation grants. I believe that's something that you include in your work program, and I think it's helpful to the local jurisdictions as we look for construction funding or competitive funding for all of these projects. We have made some progress in our electric vehicle charging project. We can't take credit for that work. We have to give all of that credit to CCOG, who's been really helpful in providing their on-call transportation planner to us, who I believe is near completion on environmental. It's such a small project that the 7,000 that we have identified there, actually we need all of it for the design and construction phase of that project. So the transportation planner for CCOG has picked up the environmental piece along with our contract planner at the city. So I think that's all that I have to give you an update on, unless there's any questions you guys have for me on the progress of our projects.
Any questions? No? Any public questions? None.
Okay,
Thank
just
you,
in the
Melissa.
nick of time.
Thank you.
I'll see you guys later.
Moving on to item number 17. We got about 7 minutes. Hopefully we can cram this in 7 minutes. Transit quarterly report. Amber.
Yes, I will pass this on to CTA staff, Melissa Reggio.
Thank you. As you'll see when we get to the CTA agenda, that we have evaluated, I know previously we had reported that we are, we picked up this funding from Calaveras Transit. We've been evaluating these projects, seeing where they are, and we are proposing new projects and new programming in the CTA agenda. So, do you have any other questions?
Any questions? No? Public? No? Okay, moving on to B.
Yes, sorry,
This
my
I know I
apologies.
do, and that's
Yes.
why I called.
Yes, I'll take this item. I was looking at Erin to see if she could turn on the projector. This is the semi-annual performance report for Calaveras Transit. It's been a goal of us CTA staff to provide timely performance reports in order to evaluate the system in time to make changes as we go along here. So this is, I wasn't able to provide this to you, my apologies, before the meeting, so I included, I believe everybody has a copy that we provided tonight, and there's some on the rostrum there for the public. So I'll just walk through kind of the tables and we can have a discussion. about where we're at.
Before we start, how long do you think this is going to take to go through it? Should we just table it, take a 5-minute break, go into CTA, and then come back? Or do you want to go forward?
What is this? I can make it 5 minutes long. We can go fast.
It's probably good to have this before the CTA meeting.
I'll say this is the last
Well, it is, but I
item.
break through halfway through. Go ahead.
Okay. So this is the, all the data shown in here is 6 months from July 1st to December 31st. We've included comparisons of the first 6 months of the last 2 fiscal years there as well. So this is just standard operating statistics. I think you'll see here vehicle service hours and miles, which we refer to as revenue hours and miles when passengers are actually able to ride the system, has reduced just slightly, and this is really just from the Delta Gold Line, which was a service to Stockton, was eliminated in fiscal year 18. And then this year we implemented with the Saturday service, we suspended it for 3 months and made it a seasonal service. So I think that's where you kind of see a slight reduction in vehicle service hours and miles. Operating costs and expenses, I wanted to point out at mid-year, we've included what we should have for operating costs at mid-year. It's not our budget to actuals because we wanted to include the true kind of 6-month operating costs of expenses that should be incurred there. But you can see it's about a 20% decrease from the previous 2 fiscal years. And then revenue here, we didn't have the previous 2 fiscal years data for that 6-month period exactly, so you can't see a comparison there. Moving on to service effectiveness measures. We're showing here ridership, and you can see that ridership has really kind of remained stagnant. We're at about 19,000, 20,000, 19,000. So for the first 6 months, I think it's expected that ridership would continue on the trend that it was, on the path that it was headed. You know, although the CTA took over, and we did implement some minor service changes in September, I don't think, you know, we've expected that to turn the system around immediately. I think this long time trend, I believe fiscal year 17 was the lowest ridership had been in the last 10 years for the transit system, and I believe it's about 60% less than it was 10 years ago. So we're really at a very low point right now, and we have a lot of work to do, and we know that, and we knew that when we formed the transit agency, and that's why this year we've been working really hard on a really comprehensive approach on every aspect of the system here. Passengers per vehicle service hour and per mile are pretty similar, although passengers per vehicle service mile has increased by 3.6%. It's not significant because you see an increase from 0.12 to 0.13 in 1 fiscal year. And then average daily ridership has stayed pretty much the same. I mean, you're looking at 1 person per day difference between the fiscal years. So very, you can tell not much has changed in the last 3 fiscal years. Moving on to looking at ridership by route. You know, we wanted to dig in a little bit deeper into the ridership numbers to see if there were any significant trends on any routes. For the red line and blue line, you see between fiscal year 17 and 18, there were kind of significant changes there, and that's when the county moved, kind of redesigned those routes. So the blue line used to go from Arnold to Columbia, and the red line just from Valley Springs to Angels, and now the red line goes all the way to Columbia, and the blue line just goes between Arnold and Angels. So you kind of see the shift between the 2 routes, but the numbers are essentially the same. But the red line is our bread and butter, and Columbia College is the largest ridership group for us. So when you see shifts in that, you know, we tend to think, okay, there's something happening with Columbia College. Either they're offering fewer classes, there's less enrollment, or we need to do more outreach and partnership with them on education to their student population. So staff is actually working right now on some partnership opportunities for a student pass program So we're excited about that, and hopefully that'll make improvements to that red line. The purple line goes all the way to Jackson, and we just extended it to the Sutter Hill Transit Center in September. And so a slight reduction in that is showing me that we need more education and outreach on what that line provides for people to see if we can improve that line. And then the Saturday Hopper did well because in October we were able to serve 2 different events that went on, and that was really successful. Moving on to service efficiency measures. This one we're really excited about. Staff has been, this has really been a focus of us to kind of get the cost under control for the transit system. So here you see at mid-year we are making huge strides in terms of reducing operating costs per vehicle service hour. And that's something we've been trying to tackle the last several years in terms of being able to provide more service for the same or less cost. And so this is a huge performance measure for us, and we're headed in the right direction. Fare box recovery ratio, let's discuss this. So here at mid-year, this is a very conservative estimate. We're showing 8.1%, and I think some of the things we talked about in the audit with Calaveras Transit, this 8.1% is the raw fare box recovery ratio in terms of our operating cost and really conservative estimate on our revenues. It doesn't account for if we sold the surplus bus, depreciation, what transit was also able to do, which is a good thing the last couple years, is exclude operating costs for services that were new. And you can exclude operating costs for new services for 3 years. And we're done with those 3 years. So this year, the transit system won't be able to exclude any operating costs. So you'll see that hit this fare box recovery ratio this year. But this is, I think ridership and fare revenue is obviously a large piece of the system, and our focus point when we did the rebranding and this marketing effort will be huge for us this year, but we'll be focusing a lot on seeing if we can get this up by the end of the fiscal year. So conclusion here, I think there's pros and cons. Obviously, the negative of this performance report is we're still, headed on a kind of somewhat downward trend. But the positive is that we're getting costs under control. We're collecting our revenues that we have control over collecting. We are really focusing on, like I said, a really comprehensive approach this year. If you see that bullet list down towards the bottom of that page, it just shows a few things that we're focusing on. So essentially executing a comprehensive marketing campaign with the rebranding effort, improving our relationships and coordination with partner agencies like CalWorks purchases a lot of tickets from us for their clients. Columbia College is a huge partner that we need to focus on. So focusing on those partnerships with agencies who are huge contributors to our system is really important. Increasing outreach and education of our services, obviously. A lot of the issues, people just don't know about our service or what we do, or that we go 3/4 mile off route and we can pick you up, or that we go to Sutter Hill Transit Center and connect to Sacramento. So that's going to be a big push this year with the rebranding and the marketing campaign. Improving customer experience and access, you'll see in the CTA agenda, we'll be approving, or we'll be asking for the council to approve an agreement with Token Transit, which is a mobile ticketing application. So things like that to make it easier for people to ride our system. Managing operating expenses and improving efficiencies. There's a lot of different ways that we're doing this. And one you'll see in the CTA agenda with the operations contract is a big piece of our operating expenses. Collecting our revenues in a timely manner, that's been a huge issue the last several years. And thanks to Melissa, we are doing well, and she's being very forward-thinking and looking out for us so we don't go into the red. And then update to the short-range transit plan, which will do rider surveys and really look at demographic changes and provide a comprehensive 5-year financial, capital, and operations plan for us. So that will be really big for us this next year. And that's my summary of the performance report. Happy to answer any questions. Was that 5 minutes? I think
You did very well.
Was that 10?
All right, you're okay.
I tried.
Nice work. Well, it's part of the CTA anyway, so it's fine. Any council questions? Yes?
I'm just needing a 1-minute break to talk to Josh before, so he can take off.
Before what?
Before we start our next
Okay, you would like a break?
1 minute.
Yeah, I need a break to talk to him too. Any other questions? Any public questions on this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gary Caldwell, Valley Springs. One of the things I mentioned before is to take out a big ad in the local paper that says pick up and drop off at your doorstep or something like that, because you have route deviation you can do. So for those people who say, I can't walk down to the bus stop, or I can't ride my bicycle down there, or I don't have transportation to get down there, we'll pick you up at your front porch. And it doesn't cost any more. The other thing I was going to say is you need to give some people a taste of the transit system. Now, at least coming up soon, there will be events going on in Murphy's. And I realize, Mr. Chairman, it's not your district, but there will events going on up in Murphy's, Irish Days, President's Day, that people could use a ride possibly from, say, Angels up to Murphy's. And it's so difficult to park in Murphy's. I don't know if you've been there at the most recent events. It's really tough to park. So if they could get a ride up there to the event, whatever the event might be, I think that would be good, just to get them familiar with the system. And there are a lot of people who were hesitant to try BART and because they thought it was too cumbersome and it took more time and more trouble than they wanted to get involved in. But I think you may have a similar situation where people don't want to ride public transit because it's too cumbersome, too difficult to comprehend the system, so forth. But give them a free ride up to Murphy's. And you can do that. You have the authority the board has the authority to do that. So that would be my suggestion. Give them a taste. Take out an ad that says, we will pick you up at your front door and we will drop you off at your front door. And that should hopefully increase ridership, I would hope. It doesn't necessarily increase your fare box return, but it'll certainly increase ridership, and maybe those who do try it may become paying customers in the future, and who knows? Thank you.
Gary, I think you dropped something or you knocked it off the pedestal there. All right, we will take just a 2-minute break here before we go into CTA.
I think it goes on here.
We're going to adjourn as the COG, and we're going to convene as the CTA, Calaveras Transit Agency. So moving forward, I guess we're going to call to order, and then we're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance again.
Okay.
Hopefully this time we get it right. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And that's why we were doing it again.
You got it right this time.
All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Hey, can you guys, thank you. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial and will be acted upon by the council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff member, or interested parties may request that an item be removed from the consent agenda for further discussion. Does any council member wish to pull an item? Any staff member wish to pull an item? Any member of the public? Seeing none, we'll come back to ask for a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Moving on to the regular agenda, public comment, 5 minutes per person. Comments shall be limited to items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council and not on the posted agenda. This is Government Section Code 54954.3A. Any public comments? Seeing none, we move on to item number 6. This is a resolution number 19-6, in public hearing to adopt the Calaveras Transit Agency's Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, Paratransit Compliance Plan. I guess we should open the public hearing. Public hearing is now open. Is there any public comments on this item? Seeing no public comment, I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the council. This is an action item.
So moved.
And
Second.
a motion and a second. Any other conversation? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 7-0. Moving on to item number 7. This is a minute order approving the Calaveras Transit Agency, or the CTA, fiscal year 2018-19 operations budget amendment number 2. Melissa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As stated, this is the budget amendment number 2. The main reason for this amendment was to update based off mid-year. As you can see in the expenditures, if you look at the chart, it's 7A on packet number 40, page 46. Line item 5480, gas and oil. In the budget to actuals on the consent agenda, it is tracking a little high for what we had budgeted. So staff is recommending increasing that line item to $132,000. And in our previous budgets, we had not identified the advertising revenue. So if you look on line item 4713, this was a conservative estimate, so we updated that item to $10,000. And then at mid-year, we had interest at approximately $32,000, so we increased that line item. So we budgeted revenue on line item $4,300 to $6,000. If the council has any questions. The other thing I would like to add is when we increased line item 5480, gas and oil, if you'll remember at the previous budget amendment, we had more revenue to expenses by approximately $50,000. So even though we've increased the expenses, we still have the budgeted revenue within the budget.
Okay. All right. Mike, thank you.
Chair, thank you. The question is that having just come out of the Treasury meeting last week, is as interest rates are running on average about 2.4% overall, and is expected to remain flat, that they're not looking at the Fed increasing the rates, et cetera. I would trust that if we plug a number in for interest in the future, that we look to what the pooled rate would be and use that as our guide, because I know that it's going to be a fairly stable number over the next 12 months, just looking at what the numbers look like. So to see the additional interest is not a surprise. But it indicates that we probably were a little bit short on what we thought would happen. And it's nice to see.
It is nice to see. I was kind of surprised, and then if you looked, you noticed in the COG packet on all of our budget summary sheets, we got a lot of interest with RSTP and PTMISCA, so we did pretty good. I typically don't budget interest, in the COGS operations budget. I never budgeted interest. I let that keep going into the fund to give it that padding or room. But with CTA, $6,000 for the transit system is
That's why I suggest to have this conversation, is because we need to start thinking about it as as a budgeted item. Even 2.4% versus 1% is a substantial change in our overall budget performance. So I would just ask that we look at it as a serious piece of budget, just not throw a number in there, because we thought this is what it's historically been year over year. Let's not go that direction. Let's think ahead and look to what, and I'm sure that our Rebecca can help to put that number together for you so that you can see what it is, because she is part of that treasure pool as well.
Oh, definitely.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
How do we purchase our fuel? Is it do we have like a group thing that we go and we purchase fuel from somewhere, or we get it shipped to us?
No, you know the FN,
CFN?
CFN
Right.
on Cool Station Road.
Okay.
We have an account with them, and their account headquarters is in Sacramento, so we have gas cards for all the drivers, and so they fuel up right there, and then CTA staff and the operating staff get an email, and then we reconcile all the invoices.
Is the price we're paying for fuel, is it constantly a changing thing, or do we lock in for a certain amount of time?
Oh, it's not locked in.
It's never.
It's changed.
It's always fluctuating.
That would be
Is it?
Just like you pull in buy gas in your car.
Well, I mean, working at the transit facility in New Jersey, we're buying in bulk, so I wasn't sure how this works. If we get it at a cheaper rate than the average consumer does, or
We looked at that in the past, especially with PTMI SCA funding. At one point, we had programmed a project to get a gas tank and buy in bulk, but because of environmental and all of the situations,
Double containment.
liability on the county because it would be stored here, we didn't pursue
Okay.
that project any further.
so there's no real way to necessarily reduce that fuel cost. For the
Probably
long
the
term.
only good news is that San Andreas historically actually has some of the cheapest prices around. I mean, you can get
They are.
gas here for
Yeah, I
$2.70.
buy it when I come down here.
Yeah, yeah.
There.
I would
I'm
imagine
assuming as an
that
agency,
gas
we're not
cost
paying the
is high.
tax either.
No, because with our tax
We're
item.
carbon,
And to that point, to continue that discussion is, because I had 400 vehicles in my fleet, is that you really need to have a big bulk purchase through Wright Express or CFN to really make it worthwhile. So we're not even close to the thresholds that they would want to discuss any kind of a price point break. Even with 400 vehicles, I was having trouble finding price point breaks. So we just need to keep it in mind that they're dealing with the environmental regulations, they're dealing with all the other side costs that we don't have to deal with, but we are getting a substantial discount in exchange. So, and they're also great at record keeping. They do a much better job at it than most of your standard suppliers would do. And if we bought in bulk in a tank, now you've got a security issue too. So I'm just glad we're doing it the way we're doing it.
Any other
Thanks
discussion?
for answering.
Questions? Any public comments, questions, on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Looking for a motion?
So moved.
Second.
In a second. Call for a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Moving on to item number 8, this is a minute order approving the revised public transportation modernization, improvement, and service enhancement program account, the PTMISEA. Say that quick. Program expenditure plan. Melissa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I stated in the staff report, the top shaded area of this expenditure plan, or the spreadsheet, are the projects that have been previously completed. And then these last 5 are what we identified with the remaining funding from the Calaveras Transit Agency. And then CTA staff last year, worked with the PTMISDA program, and there was additional funds available. So we turned in the project for the 2 new buses, and we received the $211,000 in July of this year. So we have, the $559,000 for these remaining projects. The AVL project is underway and almost complete. With the new branding and marketing, we're going to be ordering the new signs and we're going to be wrapping the vehicles. Like I said, we're ordering the 2 new Ford buses, and then we have the remaining $255,000 to work on bus stops. We've been working with the local jurisdictions on viable bus stop improvements. Amber's been working with Josh and Melissa, and so we'll continue with that and get these projects off the shelf.
Any council questions, comments? Any public comments, questions?
I actually do have a question. The wraps we're talking about here, this is to make all our buses have this logo on there, correct?
Yeah.
Did this company advise anyone that El Dorado Transit has the same exact colors as this bus?
Advise, the company that's doing the wraps isn't the company that did the marketing.
Yeah, but did they even mention that to anybody? Because I don't ever recall them telling us that there was another agency like right next to us essentially that has those same colors.
Well, I think
they're not, we're not ever going to run into each other, but it's just...
Well, when we were doing the rebranding effort, that was a big discussion, and we're not unique and we didn't come up with anything brand new. Everything in terms of the names from colors to logos, has been done. So it's quite difficult for a transit agency to come up with a unique name. Even Connect is being utilized various transit agencies throughout the United States.
Good.
So, we said Calaveras Connect, and these colors resonated with our local environment, and I think that's where we're headed. And I agree. Those colors are utilized not just other transit agencies throughout the United States, but a lot of businesses.
That's not necessarily a bad thing.
No,
Recognition
it's
is recognition. If the color scheme is, if somebody recognizes it because they've relocated or in this area, then that's a positive.
You're right.
Any other comments, questions?
That was all.
Any public comments or questions on this item? If not, bring it back. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
A motion and a second. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Moving on to item number 9, is submitted order approving the California Office of Emergency Services to Cal OES programming in the amount of $30,365. Melissa, you got us 30 grand.
This is the remaining $30,000. So the original apportionment was the $36,697. The Calaveras Transit Agency utilized the $7,700 on bus stop lighting. So the remaining actually was the $28,900, but because of interest, now we have $30,000. So with this security funding, these are the 4 projects that we're looking at: the electric security gate, facility security system and cameras, the repeater radio tower service, and then the security cameras that actually go on the buses. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Melissa, we're not going to see any more extensions on this, right?
Not if Melissa has anything to do with it. She's been really good at tracking this funding, and we're moving as fast as possible right now to expend these funds.
Yes, but this funding right here does expire March 31st. So I have to extend it for 1 year to buy these 4 items.
And then we'll be done.
Yes, then we'll be
I
done.
don't have to see it again.
Yeah.
And then that radio repeater service, we'll have to find an alternate funding source for it.
Yes.
Okay.
Or alternate technology to replace
Maybe.
them.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Any other council questions, comments? Any public? See none, bring it back to the board for a motion.
So moved.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Moving on to item number 10. Again, this is a minute order approving amendment number 1 of the professional services agreement with the Paratransit Services for the operation and management of Calaveras Transit. This is not Melissa, this is Amber.
Yes, I will take this item. Thank you. In March of 2018, the county, while they were operating the transit system, entered into a service agreement with Paratransit Services for the personnel and services for the operation of the transit system. That first year of the agreement that was through March 31st of 2019, with 2 option years subsequent to that. And the CTA has been assigned that contract starting on July 1st of 2018. So that contract goes till the end of March of this year. So staff in our first 6 months of operation of the program has really looked thoroughly at the operating costs and the efficiency of the system, and we've identified a lot of changes to the operations contract that will be necessary to accomplish some of the efficiency improvements that we're looking for. We also work really closely with Paratransit Services to identify a lot of things in the contract that might be restricting them from addressing or issues or making changes. So we worked with them and negotiated a 9-month extension through December 31st of 2019 at the current rate, which the first option year in the existing contract was an increase of $43,000. So we really worked in partnership with Paratransit, and I really want to thank Paratransit Services staff for coming to the table to work with us on controlling the cost for this next year. And then staff will then move forward with development of an RFP for a new operations contract, and it's a pretty extensive process. It's and looking at other jurisdiction takes anywhere between 6 to 9 months from start to finish. Caltrans requires a review of the RFP, then they require a review of your evaluation of proposals and the contract, so that you have to work into the schedule there. So 9 months will give us the time we need to put together a new contract. We've already evaluated with Paratransit Services and CTA staff the things that need to be changed in the contract. So we are prepared to move forward with that process if the board approves this amendment.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because as you know, when we first took this over, we had a problem. We had to do something really quick because we were out of amendments to these contracts. So we need to aggressively go forward on it so we don't end up there again. And it wasn't us, I know it was the county, but it was still transitory. So
the question would be, Amber, you're going to bounce this off the executive management group before you bring it before the full board? The RFP?
Yeah, so the RFP doesn't typically go to the full board.
No, but I just
for
would
approval
ask
for
that
release.
they have an opportunity to take a look at it before it moves forward.
Yeah, absolutely, I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
any comments, questions? Any public comments or questions?
Chairman, Gary Caldwell, Valley Springs. I was looking at the agreement, and of course I don't like these 1-year agreements because you're already on the downside before you know it. And I think you should be looking at entering into an agreement that's like 5 years with a 60-day, either party, 90 days, doesn't matter to me, adequate notice to terminate the agreement without cause. And in that 5-year period, you build in agreed to and negotiated increment increases so that the paratransit doesn't think, well, wait a minute, we're going to have to live with these rates for 5 straight years? I don't want to do that. So have some sort of a stepped increase, and at least the contract will go for some time. Because like I said, before you realize it, you're going to be negotiating the next one. And I think that's a waste of everybody's time. Anyway, that's my suggestion.
And I can just assure the board, it is our full intent to make this contract a long-term agreement with multiple long-term option years. And the board is aware as to why this contract was
This was a stopgap.
developed so
The
short.
previous contract, I believe, was 3 years, but they had amendments to it that extended it, and you can only go so many extensions. So this was something we had to do really quick because we were out of time. And the idea was we specifically went into it with a 1 year. So this board or this council could come back and get back going and find out what's going on. We can work into it, but I think we are looking at a long-term contract again.
Now you have time to correct that oversight.
Correct.
You're right.
Okay, any other comments, questions? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
A motion, to have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Call for vote, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Moving on to item number 11, minute order authorizing executive director to execute a software and subscription services agreement with Token Transit for mobile ticketing. Again, this is Amber.
Yes, my apologies. You get to hear from me a lot tonight. Calaveras Transit currently is a cash-based fare system. So if you want to ride the bus, you either have to get on board the bus and you have to have exact cash, exact change to ride or purchase a ticket, or you have to go to Police Station Road where our customer service center is and purchase a ticket there with cash or check. And we don't accept credit cards. Unless you're CalWorks and you order bulk ticket books for their clients. So this is one area that we really looked a lot into and did a lot of research on what we can do to make it more accessible for people. There's, a lot of urban systems have the electronic fare systems where you have a card that you can refill. Those require pretty extensive capital investments in the fare infrastructure on board the buses, as well as then the purchasing software that you need for that system. And then also, the other option is online credit card, like PayPal or things like that. But we're missing kind of a gap there in terms of, okay, when a person purchases a ticket online, how do we get them the ticket? So we would have to come up with a mechanism for that. But now with all the new mobile apps and technology, there's actually some very specific companies that are coming to the table that are specific for transit mobile ticketing apps. So this one company called Token Transit, they're currently, they're kind of blowing up right now, and they serve 59 agencies nationwide, and they're increasing their customer base. And they provide a mobile ticketing app that you go on, you can purchase your ticket, and then you just show literally the phone to the driver. So we don't need to incur any capital expenses or maintenance costs. It's just literally their cell phone. And the training for the drivers is extremely minimal. I mean, we just have to show them what that app looks like. And if you can see on the picture, kind of the graphic I put on page 60, it's really simple. I did it. I went to Stockton a couple weeks ago, and they have Token Transit. So I went on. I just downloaded the app. You put in your cell phone number, and you're done. And then you go to purchase a ticket. Now they have Apple Pay, and it picked up my credit card, and it said, okay, and put your thumbprint on it, and boom, I had my ticket. So it was super easy. And I did that a whole night before because I didn't know the system very well, and it made it really easy. So we think, this won't replace the cash-based fare system. We'll still have all of our existing options for purchasing passes. This will just be an added element. This will be good for encouraging visitors to ride our system, especially for the Saturday hopper service. So we don't expect, and we reached out to a lot of agencies that have this service, and they're very happy with it. And it hasn't impacted their fare revenue because, it's not like on day one then everybody switches over to this app. I think it'll be just utilized by certain people, and we'll have to advertise for it. So the contract is a commission-based system, so they'll get, I think here I said between 7 and 10% depending on the exchange. So if it's below $2, I think they only take 7%, and if it's above $2, they take 10% of whatever's sold on the app. So if nothing's sold on the app, they don't get paid. So it provides an incentive for Token Transit to keep improving the app, and then we get the benefits from those improvements. Like I said, they just had initiated an agreement with Apple Pay, and then, you know, everybody, all the transit agencies who have Token Transit benefit from that. So I'd open up to any council questions.
So we're going to get paid in real time, or is there a delay? I'm referring to like the Square and some of those others where there's 24-hour delays or...
Yeah, I don't believe we'll get paid in real time on the app. I think it's 24, yeah.
24 hours?
That's still not bad.
Okay. And they'll provide the accounting for the payments that they make? And the support?
Correct, yeah, the support.
Do you foresee a time where the use of the app and the fee that we're being charged per use reaches a level where it starts to hurt us?
I don't foresee that at this time. You know, I'm kind of considering this a one-year test trial for us. I'm hoping that this only increases our ridership. You know, people who wouldn't otherwise ride because, you know, it's too difficult, and this might make it easier for them to access the system. But we'll keep monitoring and see the impacts of this. But I don't anticipate that. I still anticipate the people who are riding right now will probably use a lot of the same avenues to get passes.
I just asked the question because a lot of times you set up things for credit cards and whatnot, and then all of a sudden at the end of the year, you're like, oh my God, the fees are killing us. So.
Right. Yeah, and the other agencies we spoke to said it doesn't have an impact because not everybody has shifted over. So it's a really small portion of people who are using the app right now.
How are you going to market this?
Well, luckily, I think this is really good timing with our rebranding and marketing campaign that we're kicking off. So we'll incorporate that into all of our marketing materials. And it's really good timing right
now. Upon us approving this, how long is it going to take for this to be active?
I'm hoping by next week.
Okay.
Yeah. So my goal is by the kickoff of Saturday service on the 16th.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions on indemnity. I read the indemnity clause here. One, it doesn't mention this council. It says customer. And two, given the fact that it's all electronics, and they're relatively new to what you said, but they're breaking out, it opens up a door where they could be hacked and steal information from everybody that's using their app, which would pull the indemnity clause in. Just something to bring up and think about. I prefer when we do contracts under indemnity that it states the old council itself. Something like the customer is not, I just have, doing contracts, I just have an issue somewhat with that.
Do you know?
If somebody hacks into them and steals all the information from people that have used their app, because they're going to be giving a credit card to this company or however their payments are set up for it, we could be sued. And I think individual, although county council will have to defend us, could be individually named as a party to it. So I see they signed this contract. When you go back to them, if we could maybe change this indemnification clause to include the council members being indemnified.
Did Jim look over this contract?
Yes. Yeah, and Jim had actually quite a few changes that they accepted, so I was happy about that.
And he's not here tonight, so.
Yeah, so my apologies.
But
I hear what you're saying, Gary. I just looked at, customers identified in the first page as the Calaveras Transit Agency, which I assume is inclusive of all of this.
yes, but it doesn't mean that in a lawsuit, the lawyer can say we're going to sue us all individually too. I'm telling you.
Okay.
His point's valid. Like when you pull up, you get insurance or something, when you're going to work on county or state property, it says the state of California, its officers, elected officials, and employees.
And I've had most other agencies I work since I came back, changed Mountain Valley EMS, LAFCO, and everything else has changed any contracts to make that statement, so we're protected.
Okay.
And I would like to see CTA in here, not just customer, CTAs in it. So that specifically spells it out. Because it could happen. I know these guys are expanding quickly, and who knows. So,
Okay.
okay, that's my comments. Any other comments, questions? Any public comments, questions?
Understood correctly, Mr. Chairman, the council is going to be paying somebody to be able to use these various forms of payment. Is that correct?
No.
No, not specifically. No, if you use this app, you go on, you want to use transit.
You don't pay for that use?
They will take, they will deduct it from the revenue they collect. So in a way, I guess what you're saying is true, we are paying, but it's a very small amount. You said 7%, and if it's under,
And it affects,
so it's 7 cents on a dollar.
it affects your bottom line fare box return, I assume, however minuscule it might be.
It can, but it can also up the bottom line too. If more people use an app and being able to ride it, it's.
Of course, I'm of the dinosaur age, so I'm wondering if you got hundreds of thousands of dollars of, and I can never remember the acronym, PT, whatever it is.
Oh, PMT, I mean, it's, yes.
Yeah, to improve bus stops and bus shelters. Why not buy an ATM? You know, if you go to New York and you go to the Port Authority building, they got vending machines there. And I'm sure other cities have them too. Where you stick a $10 bill in and they give you the right fare, you know, to get on the whatever direction you want to go. And what comes to my mind is that if you lay out your bus stops such that you can utilize the wall of a building, perhaps, maybe, or if not, it could be freestanding like the one is in the Valley Springs Shopping Center there. It's a freestanding ATM. I'm wondering why you can't buy it, or is it prohibited from buying an ATM? I realize that you see these pictures on television where the pickup truck drives up, throws a chain around it and drags it off, but those are few and far between, I think. And don't pay anybody. The machine will be paid for, hopefully, with federal funds. The person you pay is the guy who reloads the ATM every once in a while, and that's it. You know, it's the old story. It's other people's money. That's what you use.
Yeah, but now you're incurring a $2 to $3 cost on the passenger by using that ATM generally, unless we waive the fee.
I'm sorry, what?
Generally, if you use an ATM, it charges you a fee, a service fee. And a person taking public transportation having to spend $2 or $3 on that service fee is almost the cost of their fare for the bus. So they'd be essentially buying 2 bus fares for one ride. And I don't think those individuals could afford to.
That's dependent upon what you negotiate with your bank. We went to Europe. We used the ATM machines all the time. Never paid any transaction fees. But we arranged that before we went with B of A, who said, we'll waive all the fees.
You guys were proactive.
I mean, you have to use...
The individuals possibly using our transportation might not be as savvy as that.
Might not be what?
As technologically savvy to do that.
Oh, ye of little faith.
I'm just saying.
All right, any other public comments? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. Looking for a motion?
I would make the motion with a modification, as you recommended, to include the individuals named in it. That would be...
CTA and
yes,
council.
correct.
Didn't have to name us, but
The phrase you used, the elected officers,
phraseology.
appointed officers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Second.
And then we have a second. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Moving on to item number 12, fiscal year 2018-19 mid-year performance reports.
Yes, I provided this performance report to the COG board, and now I'm prepared to provide it to the CTA board.
Does the board wish to see it again?
Negative.
But we could address any questions from that report at this time if you'd like.
Well, the only questions I had and that I saw, and it really wasn't much at all, is when we were looking at the ridership slide, and it's really not that significant, but we got rid of the Delta Gold line and the Brown line. And mid-year last year, there was 294 riders on that. The year before, there was 586. So if you really reflect up to mid-year of this year, after that, it doesn't factor in that does that number 11,599, 594 minus the 5.1 reflect us taking out those numbers? You're comparing those numbers against other numbers.
Right.
19, yeah, do you understand?
So no, it doesn't account for that. I think just the narrative has to account for that, saying,
So
please take into account there were additional routes in the previous fiscal years that had ridership that this year doesn't.
Yeah, so the 5.1 really, it is a hard number, but it's not reflecting that.
Well, it's reflected down below. That 5.1% only reflects on the red line.
Yeah, and then 4.7 down below.
So it's reflected in the 4.7 because these are all hard numbers.
Okay.
Did I answer that incorrectly?
Great job.
Sorry.
I would also hope that we keep our options open as we see continued expansion in certain lines. I know copper is doing very poorly in relation to a lot of the other ones. However, as the town square builds out 44 units of housing or hotel space, that will drive more ridership, hopefully, to Murphy's. So we might be looking at the Saturday hopper wanting to start at town square and run up to Murphy's or Arnold, rather than just look at it as a stop point of Angels Camp. I think we could start picking up ridership, but we start looking at those options as they come up.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. The service changes we did in September were really made to address immediate, scheduling gap issues and technical issues. But we'll look to the short range transit plan to really evaluate, where there's development opportunities, expansion opportunities of the system, where our demographic shifts have been, and what major changes we need to make to the system. So we'll really look to that process to address new expanded areas.
I'm glad to meet offline about it because I think that there are some opportunities, but they're not going to come immediately. It'll be 6 months to a year before we start to see the effect. And just so we're prepared, much like fire departments and water districts, et cetera, to meet those demands. Because we have 172 units coming in to Novia Homes there in Copperopolis. We have 38 that are currently built in Lemke's Unit 2 there in La Cobra Mina. You start adding all those up, if they're even going to put another 40 or 50 homes into Saddle Creek, all of a sudden there's that additional housing element that wasn't there before. So as long as we're prepared to meet the needs of the population, and as it ages, especially in the Copperopolis area, it would be very helpful to get them into our other centers, which would be take them up to Angels Camp to shop rather than having them try to find a way to Sonora. So,
wasn't the copper line extended past Copper Cove Drive all the way down to the end of Kiva too on Little John? On demand. So the marketing, getting people aware of the fact that they can get a bus now at the Kiva Little John intersection rather than having to go all the way up to Copper Cove Drive and pick up that whole subdivision back there.
sure. We'll talk more offline.
Okay.
I have a question. With the ridership with the Saturday Hopper and the event coming up this year, are we going to expand outside this Saturday and go for the entire event to see if we can pick up more ridership going into the new year?
So we have-
Meaning like President's Day weekend, is it just gonna be Saturday, or are we gonna also accommodate the second day of the event as well? And can we be flexible with doing that to help increase some of these numbers for the cost?
Yeah, so far we've only identified major key events like the fair, where we have a separate shuttle service for the fair. And the Saturday service luckily captures a lot of events in Murphy's, but that's something we haven't really considered. I think in the past when we've done a Sunday service, it hasn't been as successful as Saturday. And right now with the Saturday service, you know, we really need to do a lot of work to market that service and make it successful, because it's currently not surviving on its own.
Yeah. And that's why I was asking, you know, the few events that go over multiple days, other than the fair, is that a way to capture some of that? If it doesn't work, that's fine. I'm just asking what options are there, and maybe with the marketing, this is a good opportunity to test it, and then say, okay, it didn't work. Let's move on and see what other options are for the Saturday Hopper to increase fares.
Okay, yeah, we can look at other, we were trying to look at events that specifically covered, you know, multiple days, because the President's Day weekend, I guess it is the full weekend, but, you know, typically at the beginning of the year, we'll kind of approve an events calendar, and have to advertise and promote it on our website. So for this year, we won't be able to do the Sunday of President's Day, but I appreciate what you're saying, and I think we'll take another look at the different events, and maybe bring that back, you know, for council consideration.
And that's fine. I can see why it would be too soon. It's right around the corner.
Yeah, and you know, we're really trying to focus on that improving the Saturday service right now, because it's not meeting its fare box recovery ratio on its own. You know, the county got to exclude it last year, so we're really trying to market that Saturday service.
This might be where event coordinators might be able to contribute a piece to the puzzle, so to speak. They might see the advantage and want to put some dollars towards having the additional service. And if it's a very defined service for their event, and they put some money towards it, they got a skin in the game, so they'll market it to some degree for us too. We haven't often thought about how to put them into that game and get them involved. They're just kind of like the victim of the process that we put in front of them. And we can change that up by simply letting them participate in that decision of the timing, because to them, the timing is critical. And if it doesn't meet their time windows, they're not going to push it. So, just brainstorming.
Any other comments? Any public comments? Seeing none, this is an informational item. We'll move on to item number 13, Paratransit Operations Report.
Well, hello. Cynthia Lawrence, Paratransit Services, Operations Contract Manager. So it looks like I'm covering November, December, and most of January, so trying to keep us sort of up to date. So first I want to start off with 2018. We had an accident, or what we call collision-free year, and we're actually running at 2.3 years of no preventable collisions. And that translates into 837,332 miles. That's a lot of mileage. We cover a lot of roads. As you saw with the weather and whatnot, we work really hard to minimize our exposure and our passengers' exposure to safety concerns with weather. Our drivers are awesome. They're very well trained. We go through a series of training events throughout the year, teaching them, reminding them of chaining. We have some buses that have auto chains. They have very big limitations sometimes when you have this kind of crazy weather. So I'm really happy to say with this last weather event, we didn't have any issue either. So we still remain accident collision free. So we're going to keep with that trend. We did our on-time performances. We've been doing really well. And so we're going to continue on that. We didn't have any route cancellations in these months. And then, of course, our outreach events. So the big Stuff the Bus events this year. We had a couple of challenges, one with the campfire. A lot of people were really focusing on taking care of the folks up there with the campfire. And we also had some weather issues that canceled one weekend. So, but I'm still proud to say we did really well. We collected 1,825 pounds of dry food, 1,540 pounds in turkeys and hams, which is always great because that means that the less impact it has on the food bank, and $744 in cash. We really enjoy our work with the people there at the food bank, Resource Connection, and they've been running short of hands around there, and so we were glad that we could also add some additional help, and we put out the red boxes for them, and just told them anything they needed. If we had the extra help, we were going to be there for them. So they were able to get some additional items that way as well. Team Member of the Month. I'm sort of happy about this part. I got my picture. Dean Hunt. He is just an awesome guy. He came on board with us May of 2017, and he is just a breath of fresh air. He comes in every day, gets his work done, has a smile on his face, and it's whatever it takes to get it done, I'm going to do it. He's got a great attitude. One of the things I just wanted to highlight, I said it in my report, and that is that our people are pretty awesome. They're very committed to our community, and Dean is no exception to that. He went out, he heard that this one passenger that rides with us was in need of a wheelchair, and despite all the efforts on that young man's that young man took to get another wheelchair or get his wheelchair repaired, he just could not do it. And Dean went out and contacted some people he knew, and next thing you know, he shows up and he's got a wheelchair for this gentleman and took it to his house for him, delivered it for him. And then the young man had complained a couple times, and he overheard him. He rides the bus to Columbia College a lot, so he heard that he was getting wet with all the weather, and he hated that his legs were wet all day long. So he went out and found him a pair of ski pants, keep his legs wet, nice and dry, so he wouldn't get wet. So just little things like that just really make a huge difference in our community and the people that we serve. And I'm just so proud of him and the rest of our team. They do a great job every day, but he's our shining star for January. So if you have any other questions.
Any council questions, comments? Oh, any public comments, questions?
All right, I'm out of here.
All right, moving on to item number 14, staff reports. Deliverable reports, no supplemental material included. Melissa, you have nothing? Amber?
Okay, so I provided a staff report that I'll try to provide on a quarterly basis for you, and it details everything that we're working on. I probably missed several different things, but it gives you the breadth of things that we're doing and kind of status of our efforts. Saturday Hopper is starting up on President's Day weekend. You saw that flyer. Our rebranding effort is well underway, and we're looking to hopefully implement that in the spring, so come March or April, but everything has to be timed out just right. The new wraps, the signs, the new brochures, so everything has to be executed within a good week span together, so that'll take some really close coordination. Staff is currently working on a long-term reserve policy for transit. We're looking at other agencies' reserve policies, and we'll bring that to the executive management group to bring to the full board at a future meeting. Capital projects, you heard an update on that. And then I provided an update on our advertising sales program, which is well underway. So we've sold all of the backs of the buses, all of, I think, on the passenger side, and so we just still have some spots available on the driver's side. So this year we'll get, I think we estimate about 10,000. That's conservative. So hopefully we'll come out a little higher than that, but next year hopefully will be a full year of full ad sales. So I think it's looking good. And that's it. I won't read the rest verbatim this time. But if you have any questions on anything, even after this evening, if you look at anything, please let us know.
Any council questions, comments? Any public? Seeing none? That's informational. Thank you, Ann. Aaron, do you have anything as staff that you want to bring up? Not at this time? Okay. Then we'll move to adjourn as a CTA. And we will reconvene as COG. And we'll go back to where we left off. We left off on item number 18, is council reports. Any council member?
Nothing to
Anything
report.
Nothing to report.
No?
I
Okay.
have a couple things to say.
Amber has. Excuse me.
Yes, that was.
What do you? Sorry.
First, I want to introduce Alvin, even though he's been here through the whole meeting. He now will be joining us on both boards and are newly elected at the City of Angels. We also voted vice mayor, and that will be Joe. And then the thing going on around town is the last meeting, I think we talked about Caltrans granting us to put our parking signs up for downtown Angels. The last council meeting for the city, I believe, we approved the design of that. So staff is going ahead with the design that the council approved, which is a little bit different than what was originally approved because we had to make them taller and they weren't on the bump outs. So part of the planning was for the bump outs at the corner going downtown. Well, we haven't planned that, but we needed a parking sign once. So we redesigned to fit the current sidewalk with the signs. So they'll be going up higher and there'll be one next to the Visitors Bureau and then one where Signal Service is now, heading up towards Raspberry Lane. We finalized our city gate report and the council at our next meeting will be reviewing the priorities that we have at the city due to our financial situation. And but good things, Tractor Supply is getting started and they're moving. I see a lot of dirt out there. Caltrans has agreed with everything they asked for their turning lane, so those are going really well to help that project go forward. And our next meeting, since it was canceled on Tuesday, is to be determined. So,
No date yet.
yep. So stay tuned. That's all I have.
How's your health care? You got a health care building being built? How's that coming along?
Yeah, that's.
They're getting dirt moved. I don't think
Yeah.
they're gonna get anything forward.
Till
Yeah,
summer.
especially
At
with
this
the
point,
weather.
they're behind. They started moving dirt, but that's about as far as they got. But
Yeah,
Great, thank you.
too wet now.
All of my job sites are set.
Yeah, everything's shut
yeah,
down.
I think a lot of.
Okay. Anyone else? If not, move on to item number 19, staff reports. The verbal report, no supplemental materials included, except for 19A. We do have some materials.
Yes,
included.
as usual, I include a pretty comprehensive staff report on an update on all the projects that we're working on, both planning and then the grant applications that we're working on, and an update on state and federal legislative matters. So you can read at your leisure. But I'll just, one thing to highlight in this report is we received $1.7 million in Highway Safety Improvement Program, HSIP, funding for the city and county, and that was a direct result of the systemic safety analysis report that the COG did for the city and county, and our consultant put together the grant applications. So I think that was, we put together 4 grant applications and got 3 awarded. So I think that was a good success from that process, and those are my updates.
That's your updates?
That's it.
Okay, any questions? No?
Good job.
Melissa, you have a staff report or anything you want to talk about? No? Aaron? You're good again? All right. Well, with that, we stand adjourned.